All right, guys. So it's been a few days, and I've had time to really think about how I felt about the Avengers Doomsday trailer. Now, I wanted to be known if you guys have seen the video that I made before about the announcement of RDJ coming back as Doctor Doom. It kind of took away my excitement for the film. Not to mention that over the last couple months, we've been getting a lot of news that this film would feature many of the OG Avengers, ones that have since passed on. And while they may be taking different forms, it felt like Marvel was going back to the drawing board. You see, Marvel has dealt with a lot of backlash in the past couple years. A lot of that has been their fault, and nobody can deny that. You know, it's terrible because back then, every single Marvel film was like an event, right? You had to watch every trailer, you had to see every film. Nobody ever walked out of the theater because everybody was waiting for that post-credit scene just for a little bit of excitement for the next project. And just the idea of coming up with different scenarios of what we thought might happen in the next movie was something that was, in a sense, kind of holy. Nobody really wanted to miss a Marvel movie. Every single one brought about a new character, a new change. And when we finally got to the Avengers for the first time, it was a monumental movement. There weren't really a lot of film franchises that did this, that interconnected a lot of films and made them have an overall story arc. And when Marvel finally decided to do this, it was something to be excited about. There were some people who thought they would never see some of their most favorite comic book heroes on screen. And when they finally got a chance to see it in these films and in these little projects off to the side, it made people even more excited, and people were always tuning in. We had a chance to meet characters like the Falcon, Sam Wilson. War Machine got much more of a substantial role. It just seemed like over the years, the character roster grew and grew, and this world grew and grew. And I was always excited to see how it would change with every Marvel project. I also always liked how each Marvel project affected another one. One of these being the events from the first Avengers film and the way Captain America's arc changed in Winter Soldier, right? He was able to less see how great America was and started to see the cracks from the world he left behind to the world that he was in now. And that was another thing I also liked about the Marvel franchise. People put a lot of faith in characters like Tony Stark and Captain America. And this kind of had a good and bad type of outcome. The good outcome was watching these characters slowly mutate from one side to another, right? At first, we meet Tony Stark. He's very arrogant, he's self serving, he wants to be a hero, and he does not trust the government at all. When we meet Cap, he's pretty much a do the right thing, by the book type guy. And by the time we reach Winter Soldier, that kind of changes when he starts to see the cracks. And we start to see both their characters kind of transfer from one side to the opposite. It was pretty cool. By Civil War, Steve no longer believed in America and only believed that he was the one that could make the right choice that was necessary. And by Civil War, also, we saw Tony Stark change his arc, less from being the guy who was reckless and more wanted to do things by the book. Now, granted, his motivations were a little bit selfish and a little self serving, but it didn't change the fact that they kind of changed the way they were doing things. It was a pretty good arc for their characters. The problem was is that I felt like this universe was built around just the two of them, and I think that was also part of the downfall of Marvel. Marvel really started to really lose their footing after the events of Endgame. Certain characters changed trajectory, certain characters retired, some characters died. And it was really sad, but it was also kind of cool seeing this kind of new era come about for the universe. And I like that because I didn't want characters to just stick around forever. You know, we have all, many of us have read comics. And the more we read comics, we see how many changes there are. How Peter Parker is no longer Spider-Man, but Miles Morales takes over. How Sam Wilson becomes Captain America. How Lady Thor ends up coming about when Thor ends up retiring as king. All of these different things that happen. How the X-Men have always kind of changed rosters over the years as some die, some retire. It's always been like that in the comics. So when it started to happen in the films, I was genuinely excited about this. I was excited to see Steve pass off the shield to Sam, seeing Bucky go without Cap and trying to find his way. I like the idea of possibly, Rhodey picking up where Tony passed away, seeing him try to protect his legacy, things like that. They were pretty cool. Now, there were some terrible things that did happen, and it felt like from the Infinity Saga, we started to lose luster, and it felt less about what Marvel wasn't doing, and then there were just some bad things that were happening in the background. like the unfortunate passing of Chadwick Boseman, who played Black Panther, and he did a phenomenal job as the character, and he really loved the character. He really loved being Black Panther. He even said that he wanted the character to go on. Unfortunately, not many of us knew that he was ill until unfortunately he passed away. And this left a hole in the production for Black Panther, as even the cast members had no idea that he was sick, and nobody had made plans to continue on if he was gone. Now, in my personal opinion, I felt that somebody should have known something. Now, granted, this was this man's journey and no one was able to tell him how to live it, but I just felt like this would have been helpful for Marvel to make a proper pivot. Maybe they didn't have to tell anyone, but they themselves could have been prepared in case things went south. And that made it hard for Ryan Coogler and the rest of the cast to kind of adapt. But despite all that, Black Panther Wakanda Forever was still a mild success, as it was kind of a tribute film about moving forward through grief and the way grief takes on different forms. And that was pretty cool with the Shuri character. I just did not feel like she deserved to suddenly be Black Panther. I would have taken somebody else, possibly M'Baku, but that's just my opinion of what I thought would have worked out a lot more. And when we got Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumanium, it was already a terrible film, but we were introduced to Kang the Conqueror, a character who is one of the biggest antagonists in the comics. As we know, he's a time traveler who's always looking to find a time which he can control and rule over, which is why the name the Conqueror comes around. When he's introduced, played by Jonathan Majors, you could tell this guy was going to be a powerhouse and he could potentially be the next Thanos with different types of motivations. And there were things that were being hinted at in that movie that made me so excited to see Kang, right? He talks about the way somebody destroyed his life. And when I found out the Council of Kangs were also in the film, I started to kind of put two and two together. I thought that maybe the Council of Kangs had come along into Kang's life and destroyed the life that he made. We know that he was married and had a great life and he was happy, and potentially maybe the Council came and destroyed his life and tried to force a destiny on him that he did not want. And this pisses him off really badly to the point where he wants to go throughout time and the multiverse and kill off as many of the Kang variants as he possibly can. And after the events of Loki, it felt like we were going in that direction, as we knew that Kang Dynasty was meant to be the next Avengers film. We got to meet the mysterious character at the end of Loki, and this was the Kang variant who was trying to keep the sacred timeline the way it was. However, after Loki kills him, this does break everything out, and Kang Dynasty was on the way. And I was not happy about the idea that Kang was killed by Ant-Man. This just should not have happened. This is supposed to be your big bad, who's supposed to be the biggest threat the Avengers deal with after Thanos. And after they killed him off with Ant-Man of all characters, I was pretty much disgusted. I love the character of Ant-Man, but I would have liked it better played by Hank Pym. But this is not a character that should be able to take down somebody like Kang, especially if he is that dangerous. And to have someone as small as Ant-Man, and no pun intended, it just felt like this character was wasted. Now, maybe they would have won a different version of Kang and showed a different one, like being called Kang the Conqueror this time. And we know there's different versions of Kang, like Rama Tut, but I felt like this Kang would have been a good foil to the other Council of Kangs. And to have him beaten by someone who is weak as Ant-Man just did not work for me. Now, maybe he didn't die because, we don't see a body. And there's an overarching rule in Marvel that if you don't see a body, they're not dead. So we didn't actually see him die. We just seen him get sucked into a device, and that was it. Now, there was a possibility he could have come back, but we never got a chance to know this, as unfortunately Jonathan Majors ran into some legal trouble. And once again, Disney decided to close ranks, get scared, push him off a cliff, and just decided to change direction. I thought that was kind of stupid when they could have just recast the character, the same thing they could have did with T'Challa, and they just decided to double down and change the overall direction. And that is how we got Doctor Doom and Avengers Doomsday. This did not seem like a good idea, especially for me. First and foremost, it felt like a desperate play on Marvel's part, bringing back RDJ to play as the character. This was just such a really dumb idea. I love Doctor Doom. He's a pretty good character. I will be honest and say that I don't know as much about him as I know about other characters. I'm probably going to do a little bit more of studying and reading some comics on the way to the actual movie. But I've always known him to have this type of swag, this type of mentality where he's always just trying to up Reed Richards and show he's more dominant over him. And I just kind of felt in the last couple movies we've seen, some of that is teased and some not all used all at one time. And with the 2015 movie of Fantastic Four, that was just kind of weird. But I was excited to see Doom, but seeing him played by RDJ, it felt like Marvel had lost its footing and decided to go back to what it knew. Now, granted, like I said, Marvel started to stumble. They really struggled to kind of keep the fan base. After Endgame, it felt like everything was more about political agenda. It was less about pushing character study and more about how can we make this female character stronger than all the male characters. I mean, we saw a hint of that with the Captain Marvel film, and then it got pushed further towards the end of Endgame when they have just all these female superheroes just fight all these enemies, which wasn't necessary because Captain Marvel just blew through all of them anyway. So I was like, what was the point of that scene? But okay. But it felt like Marvel was trying so hard to make a women empowerment shows and women empowerment movies. And there really is no need for that because if anybody has read any comics for a while, you would know there are hundreds of Marvel characters. And you know that each character has a different background, different perspective. Some are strong women characters, some are strong characters from different types of backgrounds or religions, and even some of different types of races. There was really no need to mess around with that, but Marvel just wanted to make everybody feel better. So they decided to do these films and these shows like She Hulk to kind of make women feel better. And it did not work for fans. And fans were not shy about explaining why it didn't work for them. And instead of Marvel kind of taking a step back and looking at the decisions they made, they just decided to blame the fans of the comics, saying, blaming misogyny, saying the fans of the comics were just too many men and they just wanted male characters and hated female characters and hated different races. And it was just, instead of just taking the responsibility of making bad decisions, Marvel just started to blame their comic fan base, and this bit them in the ass very, very badly. And as they released new characters, instead of trying to make characters that they introduce last longer, they would make them and then just cut them off at the angles. Characters like Moon Knight, Black Knight, Blade, which never happened. They introduced characters like the Scarab in Moon Knight, which nobody cared for because this character was just shoehorned in towards the end of the movie or at the end of the series, where they could have just added the character on in season two. But instead, they just decided to double down and offer this character big chunk of the season finale, which was not necessary. But we never saw Moon Knight again. This eventually would happen with Shang-Chi, as I was very excited to see this character get his own movie. But after we see him in this live action, this is the only time we see him. We only see him in things like Marvel's Zombies, which him having a substantial role, or What If, which was okay. But I wanted to see his character come back and have more stories. And it seemed that Marvel waited way too long to bring him back, as I do understand the director was working on Spider-Man Brand New Day. It just felt like so many characters were being wasted, and we never had a chance to see them again. And it seems that Avengers Doomsday is going to try to take a little bit of everything and salvage what they can. When Avengers Doomsday was actually announced, I was a little excited and a little unexcited. And when the trailers that were released, the little mini trailers, they were supposed to give us clues, and it seemed like it wasn't really doing that for me. I don't know, maybe I'm alone in that. And now recently we have received the new trailer for Avengers Doomsday. And I gotta say, guys, in terms of a trailer, the thing that it's supposed to do is move the needle for you. It's supposed to get you a little bit more excited for the project. You're supposed to see this trailer and you're supposed to go, I'm excited to watch this movie. And I gotta be honest, guys, I did not feel that with Avengers Doomsday. The trailer just did not do it for me. Now, I want to be honest. I don't hate the idea and the concept of the movie. I do hate the idea that certain things are just going to be introduced and certain things got kicked out. Certain things like Kang and then introducing the idea of Doom. We've never met this character before. We've never had a chance to see him before. We've never had a chance to interact with him. He just kind of shows up. Now, I'm pretty sure they're going to find a way to make his story stick. And RDJ's always been pretty good of an actor. So it doesn't surprise me that he may do a great job. I just feel like introducing this character out of the blue is going to really make it hard for fans to feel anything for him. When we get a chance to meet Thanos and the Infinity Saga, we get little minor introductions to him at the end of the first Avengers film, in Guardians of the Galaxy. So when he finally at the end of Age of Ultron puts on the gauntlet and says, I'll do it myself. And you finally see him at the very end of Ragnarok into Infinity War. You're really scared of what this dude is going to do. And he doesn't hold back at all. And when he starts to kill people or potentially get ready to kill people, you know that he really means everything that he is doing. Meeting Doom in this film, it's going to be very hard for me to be on board with him. They're going to have to do that straight out of the gate. If they can't do that and prove that this guy is an extreme powerhouse, I'm not talking about what we see in the trailer from Thor hitting him with Stormbreaker and him holding it with two fingers. That was pretty badass. But I'm going to have to feel his motivations. If I don't feel the motivations, it won't matter what cool thing that Doom does in this film. I'm not going to be on board with his character. Now, I will say, with the way the trailer opens up, I do like the voice of Doom. I like how scary he sounds. I like how RDJ has put on a little bit of that accent. He seems like he's going to be a legit powerhouse, that it makes sense that Thor has to collect all the Avengers. Now, I do like the idea of getting different types of teams. We have the Fantastic Four, we have the New Avengers, quote unquote, the Thunderbolts, and we also have the Fantastic Four who come from their universe, which I really did like their film. A lot of people didn't like it, but I liked it. I felt like that was the first Fantastic Four film, which really emphasized the idea of them being a family. I also like the idea that characters like Johnny Storm were not just there for comic relief. Johnny had a legit way he acted in the story, and I liked it. I really like how they showed he has some intelligence. He's not just a ladies' man that likes to, set things on fire. He really is a guy willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. And, I like what they did with Ben Grimm. I like what they did with the connection between Reed and Sue and them trying to raise their son. The way Reed is always going after the smartest decision, which kind of puts him at odds with Sue. I like those things. Those are things that play a lot in their family dynamic. And knowing they were coming to the MCU proper, I was excited to see how they would adapt. Then here come the quote unquote new Avengers, aka the Thunderbolts. I liked that movie. I actually liked what Marvel did with it. It was a film about mental health. It was a film about tackling mental health, how you don't have to do it alone. I actually liked those things. Seeing these characters that we saw from different types of films come back and have much more of a substantial role in their own film worked. I was glad to see Ghost come back. I was glad to see John Walker come back. I was not a, I'm kind of in the middle of how I feel about Yelena Belova, but she has had a lot of roles throughout ever since the first Black Widow film. Seeing her come back in Hawkeye, seeing her come back in this movie, just seeing that she still had an overarching presence really made me excited to see her be in this film, but I just don't really connect with her character as much as I did with Natasha. But they still try to do a great job in the Black Widow film of seeing how much she loved her sister. So when she's pissed off at Clint Barton in the Hawkeye series, I believed it. Okay, it worked for me. Seeing her come back in this movie, pretty awesome. So it's, kind of seeing all these different teams come back together, seeing John Walker deal with losing his family, and then finally trying to come to terms with his mistakes as trying to be Captain America, and the way he fell off from that was still pretty cool. And once again, I feel like a character like Bob Sentry, wasted. Characters like Vision, White Vision, who we haven't seen in a while, wasted. There are characters who are powerhouses that should be in this film. They may potentially be, but they're not here. And I feel like this is where the film will kind of screw up a little bit. But next, we'll go on with this new Avengers team put together by Sam Wilson. We don't exactly get to see him put together his team. Now, I'm pretty sure that during this film, we might get to see some of that. I hope it's not just a team that's just thrown together to be thrown together. He has recruited, it seems like Ant-Man. Of course, Joaquin Torres Falcon's going to be there, and it seems that Shang-Chi is going to be there as well. And this is potentially just the Avengers team, as Sam names it. And it seems that Thor is trying to counsel them along to say, hey, put aside these squabbles and let's try to do the best we can to save the world before it's too late. It seems that we also get some drama that's going on in Wakanda between the Wakandans and the Atlanteans. As we do know, after Wakanda Forever, they did make a pact to keep each other's secrets, to kind of keep the peace between their nations. And it doesn't surprise me, as it seems that the Wakandans are trying to protect themselves from Namor. I guess it's a possibility that Namor has gone back on his deal. Now, a lot of people don't really understand Namor is a king of Atlantis, which means he is only in it to protect his nation. He doesn't really care about Wakanda as much as Wakanda would like them to care. He cares about Atlantis, he cares about his people, and he will do whatever it takes to protect them, even if that means he has to make enemies of all the heroes around him. So it wouldn't surprise me if he has made a deal with Doom, or if Doom has went to him as a potential ally to help him kind of conquer the multiverse. Which, whether Namor knows what he plans on doing, maybe he doesn't. But Namor, if he sees what he's potentially capable of, Namor will side with him in order to get the benefit of his people. So it wouldn't surprise me if he becomes an antagonist in this film. Now, Thor being the overarching presence in this trailer does not surprise me. He is the OG Avenger of the OGs that is still around. And of all the little mini trailers that we got a couple of months ago, his was the only trailer I really liked. He had a lot of motivation, especially towards the end of Love and Thunder. We understand he's raising Gore's daughter, and he talks about how he just, wants to come back to his daughter. He talks about how he's praying to the All Father and asking for strength because he doesn't really care about winning a war. He just wants to make it back to his daughter. And as a father myself, I definitely identified with that. And seeing him try to rally the Avengers, it really made sense. And seeing him go up against Doom in that final shot, it kind of makes you scared for the potential of him dying. But he's the only character you feel this from. The rest of the characters, I don't feel a lot for them because I haven't had a lot of time with them to feel anything. Characters like Sam Wilson, Bucky Barnes, maybe a little bit of Ant-Man, but everyone else is just kind of new, and it's kind of makes it hard for you to feel anything for them. You do feel things for characters like Shuri or M'Baku because they've been around for a little while, but outside of that, you don't feel anything for them, so you don't fear for their lives. When you get the second Infinity War trailer, you get scared for the potential of somebody dying because there's the scene where Steve is trying to hold back Thanos, and you legit get scared that they were going to kill him off. You know what I mean? So it works. So when Tony gets stabbed in Infinity War, everybody jumped. When people started dying in Infinity War from being snapped away, everybody felt it. When Tony died at the end of Endgame, when Natasha died in Endgame, everybody felt it. And it's going to be very hard for Marvel to make people feel those type of things, that the potential for those things to happen in this film. That is where it's really hard for me to be excited about this movie. I don't feel anything for a lot of the characters. Now, we do get a final scene of Steve Rogers coming back. Don't really feel it. And a lot of people have pretty much said this may not be the Steve Rogers they know. He gives up the hammer, and of course we know that Mjolnir understands the use of the hammer, and if he's able to hold it, that means that he is potentially worthy. But is this the Steve Rogers we know? And I'm worried about Steve coming back because a lot of people are already saying, oh, give back the shield, Sam. No, that is not what's going to happen here. And I'm pretty sure that there is never going to be a moment of time where Steve takes that shield back from Sam. I'm pretty sure that's going to be a conversation between the characters, but there's no way in hell that Steve is going to take the shield back from Sam, especially if he decided to make him Captain America. It is already talked about in the Falcon and Winter Soldier show, where Bucky said that him and Steve talked about it and that he had decided to give him the shield a while ago. So it doesn't really change anything. And I'm pretty sure there's no way in hell that Steve is going to take the shield back from him. And I'm hoping that this film gives an opportunity for Sam Wilson to lead this team. I don't want to see him just overshadowed by Thor. I want him to have the opportunity to lead the team of Avengers and show the way he can lead this team differently than what Steve led them. All in all, guys, I just don't know how I feel about this film. I just don't know if I'm excited for it. There are a lot of characters that have been wasted. There's a lot of characters we're not going to get to see. We don't know exactly what they plan on doing with Secret Wars. Now, I did find out Kevin Feige does not plan on rebooting the franchise, and I'm super excited about that. I just felt like so much happened in this universe. If we decide to do a soft reset, fine, but I don't want to see it all rebooted. There was just way too much that happened, way too much that has occurred. I don't want to see them just wipe the slate clean and start all over again. I want to see them pick up from where these films leave off, to see how when we bring the X-Men about, how their existence is affected from the things that have happened with the Avengers and all these people with superpowers. I want to see why people don't trust the mutants because of things they have seen in the past from characters like Wanda Maximoff. I just want to see this world constantly evolve. I don't want to see it just wiped away. Okay, I just don't want to see that. All in all, guys, I don't know. I'm going to go see the film, but I'm kind of shoulder shrugging. I know we got a couple more months, and I'm pretty sure marketing is going to try to do as much as they can to get butts and chairs. There's going to have to be a lot that happens in this film to make me identify. And I know this is only a part one because Secret Wars is technically part two. I just feel like Marvel has made too many missteps. All the political foolishness that they have made, all the characters they've wasted, characters they've never brought to light. And I just hope that with this film, they can do what they can do to salvage some of it. They have had some success with things like Wonder Man and with X-Men 97. And it shows that maybe they're learning where they have screwed up at and they're trying to get it back. I just hope that they follow what's worked in the comments and not worry about the general audience. You can cater to the general audience a little bit, but they are not the ones that have built your franchise. And Marvel and Disney have got to remember that. They've got to remember that it is the fans of the comics who have made these characters who they are. And that is the fan base they have to worry about catering to. May I give the general audience a little bit of sprinkle here and there, but make sure it's the comic book audience that identifies with these characters. All right. So that was my thoughts about the Avengers Doomsday trailer. As far as the X-Men coming back, once again, it feels like it's just a cash grab. Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, I love them as Xavier and Magneto. I just feel like there's no reason for them to be here. I just don't understand why the X-Men are here. I do like the idea of seeing characters like Gambit and Shang-Chi go up against each other because they are characters that kind of have the same power set, which means that they have a pretty cool fighting opportunity. Seeing Jay Marsters come back as Cyclops in that iconic outfit, I'm so excited to see that. I'm not excited to see the way Mystique looks with that wig on. I'm sure they'll probably change it in post, but I'm glad to see the original actress is coming back to reprise her role. I'm excited to see how the X-Men kind of fit into the story. Maybe Doom tries to manipulate them, and when he realizes it's not working, because I hear that he's supposed to bring Sentinels along with him into this timeline to try to kill off the X-Men. And maybe some of the X-Men survive this, maybe they don't. Maybe some of them go on to Secret Wars, maybe they don't. But I'm interested in seeing how their characters kind of affect the story. I just kind of feel like some of them have already been done before, and some new ones come along, like Gambit, who I'm excited to see. I just feel like I'm tired of seeing the original X-Men film characters keep on coming back. I just kind of want them to wipe the slate clean with all new characters, and it seems like we're going that way with Brand New Day. I just want to be done with this version of characters and just embrace a new version of X-Men. But we shall see as we go forward. But all in all, guys, that was my thought process on Avengers Doomsday. Let me know what you guys thought of the trailer. Are you excited a little bit more to see the movie, or are you kind of shoulder shrugging? Let me know down in the comments, and I will catch you guys in the next one.